It was raining hard that evening when Jake walked down the empty street, his coat soaked and his shoes muddy. He had just finished a long shift at the repair docks and wanted to get home. But something caught his eye. A new shop stood at the corner, glowing with strange purple lights. The sign read, "Exo Pets, smart companions for smart people." Jake had never seen this store before. It wasn't there last week. Curious and honestly just wanting to get out of the rain, he stepped inside. The door opened with a soft chime. The store was quiet, too quiet. Shelves lined the walls with sealed capsules, each glowing faintly. Inside, he saw shadows of small creatures, maybe robotic pets or genetically grown animals. A soft humming sound filled the air, like the store was alive. "Welcome," said an old man from behind the counter. His eyes were sharp, and his smile was strange. "Looking for a companion?" Jake gave a half smile. "Something small. I live alone. No cats or dogs, too much fur and noise. Maybe something quiet." "Easy." The old man nodded and pointed toward the back of the store. "We just got a special model in. Very smart, very loyal. Perfect for someone like you." Jake followed him and saw a pod, different from the others. It was smooth, black, and warm to the touch. A soft blue light pulsed from within. It had no label except for one line. "Model, AN4. Status, dormant. Is it a robot?" Jake asked. "Something better," the man whispered. "It bonds to you. Learns from you. Feels like a real friend." Jake raised an eyebrow. "How much?" The price was strangely low for such advanced tech. Without thinking much, Jake paid and took the pod home in a floating bag. As he turned back to thank the old man, the store lights flickered and the man was gone. The store looked different, dusty, abandoned. Jake blinked. Was he that tired? Shrugging it off, he hurried home. His apartment was small and quiet. He placed the pod on the floor and examined it. A small button blinked green. Activate. He hesitated, then pressed it. The pod began to glow, soft mechanical whirring. Steam hissed from the seams. The surface split slowly, like flower petals opening. Jake leaned in, expecting some small drone or metal creature. Instead, a soft hand reached out. Jake stepped back in shock. From the pod came a girl, not more than 5 feet tall, skin pale blue and glowing softly. Her hair was silver and shimmered under the lights. She wore a thin white suit, and her eyes wide, purple, and frightened locked onto Jake's. Shivered and crawled out of the pod slowly, like a newborn animal. Her lips moved. She whispered something in a language he didn't understand. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. The pod chirped. "Bonding successful. Designated owner, Jake Harlow. Subject AN4 now imprinted." The girl crawled closer and held his leg tightly. She looked up at him like he was the only safe thing in the world. Jake stared at her, heart racing. "You're not a pet. You're real." She tilted her head. "Jake?" She repeated softly. The pod's AI voice continued. "Pet protocols initiated. Language download in progress. Emotional sync, 3%. Name assignment pending." Jake backed up and hit the wall. "This is a mistake, a big one. You're not a machine." The girl followed him, still silent, eyes full of wonder. She touched a lamp, the wall, her own fingers, exploring everything like it was new. When she touched a mirror, she looked confused, even scared by her own reflection. Jake picked up his tablet and tried to contact the store, but the signal bounced. The address didn't exist. No online data, no history. It was like the store never existed. He looked at the girl again. She had sat down on the floor, hugging her knees, watching him quietly. Jake exhaled and ran a hand through his hair. "Great, I bought a smart pet." And ended up with an alien girl. The girl blinked and gave a small smile, as if she understood. Jake didn't know what she was, or where she came from, but one thing was clear. She was his responsibility now. And something told him this was just the beginning. Jake didn't sleep much that night. The alien girl sat in the corner of his living room, legs crossed, staring at the ceiling. She didn't ask for food. She didn't ask for water. She didn't even speak except to softly whisper his name every now and then, like it gave her comfort. Jake. At 3 a.m., Jake finally gave up trying to sleep. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and made himself some tea. When he turned around, she was standing right behind him, quiet as a shadow. "Whoa, you scared me," he said, almost dropping the cup. She tilted her head. "Scared." Her voice was calm, almost like a song, but broken and soft, like someone still learning how to use their tongue. He noticed the way she moved, graceful, careful, like she was copying him. "You understand me now?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Learning. Words coming." Jake blinked. "How?" She pointed at her head, then at the glowing pod beside the couch. "Download. Fast. Not all, but enough." He sat down at the table and motioned for her to sit too. She followed him like a child watching a parrot, every motion filled with quiet wonder. "I need to call someone," Jake said slowly. You're not a pet. You're someone. You need help, real help." But when he tried to call the police, the screen went black. Signal blocked. Authorization revoked. Subject AN4. Classified. Jake froze. That wasn't just weird. That was military-grade lockdown. The kind only the government or someone way more powerful could do. He looked at her again. "What are you?" The girl frowned. "Am I wrong?" Jake's heart hurt a little. "No, not wrong. Just surprising." She leaned forward and placed her hand over his. "Nova," she said. "Huh." She pointed at herself. "Name Nova." Jake smiled nervously. "Okay, Nova." She smiled back. It was small, but it lit up her entire face. For a second, she looked just like a human girl, young, happy, full of hope. That moment didn't last. Outside, a humming sound began, faint but growing louder. Nova stiffened. Her markings glowed faintly blue. She ran to the window and peeked through the curtain. A small black drone hovered in the distance, scanning buildings. "Bad," she whispered. "They're looking." Jake grabbed a towel and covered the glowing pod. "Who's looking?" Nova didn't answer. She sat on the floor and curled into herself. "Don't take me back, please. I'm safe here. I can be good. I can learn." Jake crouched down beside her. "No one's taking you, but I need to understand. Why are they after you? What are you?" She didn't speak for a long time. Then she reached out and touched his forehead with 2 fingers. Jake gasped as flashes filled his mind, images, not words. A lab, white lights, needles, machines, other girls, crying. Then escape, running through vents, a ship, hiding, a pod. The pet store. And then, him. Jake stepped back, stunned. "You escaped?" "From a lab?" Nova nodded slowly. "I wasn't supposed to feel," she whispered. "I was made for service, for obedience. But something broke. I woke up." Jake stared at her in disbelief. She wasn't just some alien pet. She was a runaway science experiment. Possibly the only one of her kind to ever break free. "You're not a pet at all," he said. She shook her head. "But I can still be good. I can clean, cook, learn more words. Please, don't send me back." Jake looked at her, really looked. She wasn't dangerous. She was scared, lost, alone, and she trusted him. He sat down next to her. "You're not going anywhere, Nova. You're safe here." Tears welled up in her glowing purple eyes. Not from fear, but from relief. In that quiet moment, Jake understood something important. This wasn't a pet. This was someone who had never been treated like a person before. And now, whether he liked it or not, she was his to protect. The next morning, Jake woke up to a strange smell. Not bad, just unusual. Like warm fruit mixed with hot metal. He rushed into the kitchen and stopped dead in his tracks. Nova was there, standing in front of the stove. She wore one of his oversized shirts, rolled up to her knees, and held a spatula like a sword. Her silver hair was tied in a messy knot. The floor was a mess of flour, blue goo, and empty cereal boxes. "Morning, Jake," she said with a bright smile. Jake blinked. "What are you doing?" "Making food," she said proudly. "Saw you do it. Tried to copy. Breakfast is ready." He looked at the pan. There were eggs maybe, but they were purple and sizzling. Strangely, the bread was half burned, half frozen, and something glowed green. "I appreciate the effort," he said slowly. "But maybe I'll cook next time?" Nova tilted her head. "Did I fail?" No, Jake said quickly. "You just need practice." Her smile returned. "Then I will learn. I like doing things for you. It makes me feel real." That last word hit him hard. Real. No one had ever let her be that before. Over the next few days, their apartment changed. Nova was everywhere, curious, clumsy, and full of questions. She learned fast. She watched old cartoons and copied voices. She cleaned everything with military precision. She even tried to fix his broken toaster using spare wires and a screwdriver. Sometimes, Jake caught her just sitting by the window, staring at the sky. When he asked what she was thinking, she'd simply say, "I wonder if the stars are still looking for me." One night after dinner, Jake brought out an old sketchpad. "Want to draw something?" he asked. Nova nodded eagerly. She picked up a pencil and slowly, carefully, drew a picture. At first, it looked like random lines, but then he saw two figures. One tall, one small, holding hands. "Is that us?" he asked. Nova smiled. "Yes, this is what happy looks like." Jake didn't know what to say, but not everything was peaceful. One afternoon, while Jake was at work, his home security alarm pinged. He checked the feed on his wrist tablet and saw Nova standing at the door, talking to a stranger. The man wore a delivery uniform, but his eyes, they were scanning. Too focused, too alert. Nova stayed calm, smiling politely. She refused to let him in. The man eventually walked away, but Jake noticed something else. Nova's hand glowed blue behind her back, like it was charging with energy. When Jake got home, she acted normal. But he asked, "What happened earlier?" "Just a delivery," she replied with a small shrug. "Nothing was taken." He stared at her. "Nova, are you hiding something from me?" She looked away. "I was made to hide. To protect myself. You make me feel safe. I don't want to lose that." Jake sat beside her. "You don't have to lie to me. If you feel in danger, I need to know." Nova nodded slowly. "I'm trying to learn trust. It's not easy." He gently took her hand. "Let's learn together." That night, Nova asked him a question that surprised him. "If I'm not a pet and not a machine, what am I to you?" Jake thought about it. She wasn't just a guest. She wasn't just a burden. She was part of his life now. "You're Nova," he said. "That's enough." She smiled, eyes shining like stars. "Then I want to stay. Nova, I want to stay here." And for the first time, Jake believed it might actually be possible. But outside, far above the clouds, a dark ship blinked into orbit, and someone whispered across the void, "Found her." 3 days passed. Quiet. Too quiet. Jake had installed new security systems around his apartment, silent alarms, thermal sensors, and signal jammers. Nova helped, memorizing every step. She even redesigned the locks using parts from Jake's old projects. Her hands moved fast, like she'd done this before. But no matter how much they hid, Jake couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. Then, on a rainy night, everything changed. It started with a noise, a soft, high-pitched beep at 2:41. Jake sat up instantly. The security alert was blinking red. Unknown signal detected. Unidentified drone above the rooftop. He rushed to the window, carefully pulling back the curtain. There it was, a small black drone with no markings, hovering just out of reach. Its lens pointed straight at their window. Jake backed away. "Nova, wake up," he whispered. She was already standing behind him, fully awake, eyes glowing slightly. "They've found me," she said, voice calm but cold. Jake grabbed his bag. "We're leaving now," Nova said. "They'll follow. If we run, they'll track us. I must do something." Before he could stop her, she stepped onto the balcony. Her skin lit up with glowing blue patterns, bright and pulsing. The drone zoomed in, but then its camera flickered, crackled, and exploded in midair. Nova came back inside, face pale. "That will not stop them long. It was just a scout." Jake stared at her. "Nova, how did you do that?" She didn't answer. She looked different, stronger, and afraid. The next day, Jake got a call from his old military friend. "Clara, something's going on," she said. "Your name came up in an encrypted report. Private surveillance. Unauthorized drone activity. They're trying to bury it." Jake played dumb, but Clara wasn't stupid. "Whatever you're into, Jake, get out of it, now." After the call, he turned to Nova. "They're covering their tracks, hiding the search." Nova sat on the couch, silent. She hugged her knees, shaking slightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want this. I didn't ask to be born like this. They made me for control, for orders. I only wanted to feel something real." Jake sat next to her. "You found it. You found you." She looked up, eyes filled with pain. "But what if that's not enough? What if I'm just a mistake they want to erase?" Jake reached into a drawer and pulled out an old ID chip burner. "Then we make sure they can't find you again." The process was dangerous. Jake had once erased stolen military IDs, but this was different. Nova's chip was embedded deep in her spine. Removing it could kill her. Disabling it was the only option. She lay still on the workbench while Jake carefully inserted wires and tools into a hidden panel behind her neck. As sparks flew, Nova whispered, "I trust you." Those words pushed Jake to go even slower, even gentler. Sweat dripped from his forehead. Finally, with a quiet buzz, the tracker went dark. The room fell silent. Then Jake smiled. "It's done. You're off-grid." Nova sat up, dizzy but smiling. "I feel free." But the victory didn't last. That night, Jake checked his building's camera feed. And he froze. 3 figures in black armor entered the hallway, silent, no heat signatures. No names, not human. They moved like shadows. Jake turned off all lights and grabbed Nova's hand. "They're here." Nova didn't panic. She stood tall. "They won't stop until I'm back in the cage." "Then we make them regret it," Jake said, locking the door. He opened a hidden panel behind his kitchen wall, revealing a secret passage. A relic from his time building illegal tech routes for smugglers. They stepped inside, leaving behind the only home they had known, and just before the last panel shut, the front door of the apartment burst open. The hunters were too late, but they were close. Too close. As they crawled through the dark tunnel, Jake whispered, "You okay?" Nova nodded, gripping his hand tightly. "I'm not scared anymore. I'm angry." Jake looked into her glowing eyes and knew this girl was done running. The tunnel was cold, narrow, and smelled like old metal and dust. Jake and Nova moved fast but careful. Their footsteps echoed faintly, and every creak of the walls felt like a gunshot in the silence. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He had built this tunnel years ago, never thinking he'd need it for something like this. Nova followed closely, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She didn't speak. She didn't complain. She just kept holding Jake's hand like it was her anchor. Behind them, the apartment was gone, burned. Jake had triggered a silent Defense protocol before leaving a self-cleaning fire that erased everything. If the hunters had come for Nova's trail, there'd be nothing left to find. They think we're dead, Jake whispered. Good, let's keep it that way. Nova didn't smile, but she nodded. After what felt like forever, they reached a metal hatch. Jake punched in a code, and the door opened into a small underground warehouse filled with spare parts, old tech, and one thing that still worked. His escape bike. It was rusty but fast, powered by silent magnetic coils. Nova helped unload it with supplies. Then she paused. She turned to Jake. Where will we go? Out of city limits, he said. There's an old safe house in the hills, off-grid, hidden. We'll be okay there. She nodded, but her eyes were distant, like her mind was already somewhere else. Jake climbed on the bike. You trust me? Nova climbed behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. Always. They rode through the old service tunnels, darkness rushing past them like a storm. Every few minutes, Nova turned her head, sensing things Jake couldn't see. Her senses were sharper now, like she was changing, growing stronger. When they surfaced outside the city, the sky was gray, and the air smelled of rain and ozone. They were surrounded by thick woods, silent hills, and silence. No drones, no signals, just freedom. For a moment, it felt like peace, but only for a moment. Back at the city's edge, the hunters weren't gone. The explosion in Jake's apartment had triggered an alert, and someone had recognized the energy signature Nova used when she destroyed the drone. Not human energy. Not from this galaxy. From a lost experiment once classified as Project N4, sentient weapon. The hunters weren't after a missing pet. They were after something much more dangerous. And now, they knew she was still alive. Meanwhile, at the safe house, Nova sat by the window watching the trees sway. She wore one of Jake's jackets, too big for her small frame. Her eyes were calm, but her fingers were restless. Jake made tea on the solar burner. He handed her a cup and she took it gently. I don't want to run forever, she whispered. No, Jake said. Then help me fight, she said, turning to face him. Jake stared. Fight how? Nova stood and raised her hand. Blue light shimmered across her skin. They made me a weapon, Jake, but I don't want to destroy. I want to choose. Jake nodded slowly. Then we fight on our terms. He spent the night wiring the safe house with sensors, drones, and traps. Nova helped him, charging batteries just by touching them. Together, they built a hidden bunker beneath the cabin, just in case. Jake gave her a communicator and showed her how to trigger alarms. From anywhere, she watched him closely. Why are you doing all this? He stopped. Looked at her. Because I care, he said simply. Nova stepped forward and held his hand. That's what makes you dangerous to them, she said softly. You're not afraid of me. Jake smiled. You're not the one I'm afraid of. Far above, the black ship moved closer. Its captain stared at the screen showing Nova's face. She's not just a subject anymore, he muttered. She's evolving, adapting, bonded. He turned to his crew. Prepare to deploy. Back at the safe house, Nova sat beside Jake, watching the stars. Her head rested on his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running alone. She had someone who stood beside her. And tomorrow, they would stand together again, even if the galaxy came for them. The safe house felt quiet. Too quiet. Nova sat alone in the underground bunker Jake had built. The lights were dim, the air was cool, and the silence felt heavy, like something was waiting to break. She closed her eyes and placed her hand over her chest. Her fingers pressed against her skin, just above where the energy pulse lived inside her. It always hummed low, steady, but now it was growing, stronger, hotter. Different. Above ground, Jake was checking the perimeter. His motion sensors were all green. No signs of drones. No heat signatures. But something still felt off. When he returned, he found Nova sitting cross-legged in the center of the room. Her skin glowed faint blue, but her expression was pale, worried. "Something's wrong," she said. Jake crouched beside her. "What's happening?" She looked at him, fear hidden behind calm eyes. "I think I'm changing," Jake swallowed. "What do you mean?" Nova held up her hand. Tiny sparks of light flickered between her fingers, dancing like fireflies. It wasn't always like this. I used to hide it, suppress it. But the more time I spend with you, the more I feel, the harder it is to control." Jake reached out and gently touched her hand. The sparks didn't burn. They felt warm, like life itself. "You're evolving," he whispered. Nova nodded. "The scientists who made me. They didn't expect me to survive outside the lab. They said I would break. Fade away." "But you didn't," Jake said. "Adapted," she replied. "Your world changed me." She stood slowly, walking to the small mirror on the wall. Her reflection shimmered. The markings on her skin were no longer just patterns. They were glowing circuits, alive, shifting. Like they were responding to her emotions. She stared at herself. "I wasn't just made to serve. I was made to replace." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Replace what?" Nova turned to him. "The perfect life form. That's what the lab wanted. Something that could blend into any world, learn, grow, obey, a living tool." Jake stepped back. "So you're a weapon?" She shook her head. "I was meant to be, but something changed. I escaped before they could finish programming me." Her voice cracked. "I learned pain before I learned purpose. I learned fear before I learned language, but then I met you. And for the first time, I wanted to live, not as a tool, not as a weapon, just as Nova." Jake felt his chest tighten. She wasn't just hiding from hunters. She was hiding from herself. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The bunker's warning system flashed red. "External breach detected. Unknown signal approaching. High energy levels." Jake grabbed his pulse gun. "They're here." Nova didn't move. "Nova, let's go." But she stood still. "No, I need to show you something first." She closed her eyes. Her body glowed bright. White-blue light flowing from her skin like water. Her hair floated, as if caught in a breeze. Her voice became layered, echoing. "I've been holding this back," she said. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd see me as one of them. But now you need to know, I'm not just some lost girl." She raised her hand toward the ceiling. The power shut off, then came back twice as strong. Lights, sensors, the defense. Grid fully active, fully controlled by her. Jake stared in disbelief. "You linked with the system?" Nova nodded. "I am the system now." Outside, the black ship landed silently in the woods. 3 armored hunters stepped out, weapons drawn. They scanned the land, but the signals were scrambled. The terrain was shifting. Trees moved like illusions. Gravity felt heavy, then light. One of the hunters stopped. "She's manipulating the environment," he growled. "She's maturing," said the leader. "The fusion core must be stabilizing inside her. If she reaches full sync, we won't be able to contain her." "Orders?" The leader narrowed his eyes. "Terminate. No capture." Back in the safe house, Jake looked at Nova with a strange mix of fear and awe. "Nova, if they can't capture you, they'll destroy you." "I know," she said softly. Jake stepped closer. "Then what are we going to do?" She looked at him, a calm storm in her eyes. "We're going to make sure they fail. And for the first time." Jake didn't see a frightened alien girl. He saw a rising force, one that chose compassion over control. And if the galaxy wanted to erase her, he'd stand beside her and fight. No matter what she was becoming. The ground trembled. Trees shook. And the black ship above the forest powered its weapons. Inside the bunker, Nova stood tall, her body glowing like a star. Jake loaded his old rifle, eyes steady, fear pushed deep inside. "They're coming," Nova said quietly. Jake looked at her. Then we make them regret it. Above ground, the armored hunters split into formation. Their boots pressed into the soil like hammers. Their visors scanned the landscape, blinking through layers of false terrain. She's masking her presence. One growled. The leader raised a device and slammed it into the earth. A pulse spread outward, disabling cloaks, burning through. Illusions. The cabin shimmered into view. Target locked. On my mark, said the commander. In the bunker, Nova swayed. She clutched her chest. They're using an energy disruptor. It's hurting me. Jake held her shoulders. Can you stop it? I can try, she whispered, trembling. But it'll burn everything. I'll have to channel all of it. Jake frowned. You could die, she met his eyes. If I don't, we both will. Jake hesitated, then handed her the portable battery core from the defense grid. Use this to focus the charge. Don't overextend. Nova stared at it. Why are you helping me? I'm not even human, Jake smiled. Doesn't matter what you are. I care about who you are. Tears welled in her eyes. That's why. I'm not afraid anymore. The first explosion shook the ground. The hunters had fired a warning shot, one that shattered trees and split rocks. Nova stepped outside. The air around her shimmered with heat and light. Her glowing skin pulsed like thunder. Her markings now stretched like glowing vines across her body. Jake followed close behind. The lead hunter raised his blaster. Return with us or be erased. Nova raised her hand. The sky darkened. The wind stopped, and the world went silent. I'm not going back, she said, her voice deep and clear. I choose who I am. I choose freedom. The hunters opened fire, but the bullets never reached her. They froze mid-air, caught in a glowing field of energy. With a flick of her wrist, Nova sent the rounds flying back into the trees, exploding harmlessly in the distance. The second wave advanced, moving faster, charging with plasma blades. Jake stepped forward this time. He didn't have powers. He didn't glow, but he stood between them and her rifle raised. Try it, he growled. The hunters hesitated. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't expected. And then Nova screamed, not in fear, but in release. A wave of light erupted from her body. Not to kill, but to erase the trackers, the controls, the systems buried in her DNA. The command link to the ship shattered. The weapons short-circuited. The hunters dropped their blades. Systems crashing, suits locking. Silence. And then peace. Nova fell to her knees, breathing hard. Jake rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. You did it, he whispered. You're free. She leaned into him. Only because you stood with me. He smiled through tears. Always. 1 hour later, the ship above powered down. Without a signal, without control, it left quietly, fading into the stars. The hunters were gone, and the sky felt wide again. A week passed. Jake and Nova repaired the cabin, replanted the garden, cooked real food, watched old Earth movies. Nova laughed more. She wore flowers in her hair. She painted pictures of stars. And every night, she fell asleep near Jake, her hand resting gently on his arm. He never asked her to stay. She just never left. One morning, as they watched the sunrise, Nova turned to Jake and whispered, Do you think I belong here now? Jake looked at her, the alien girl who had once been hunted, feared, and forgotten, and smiled. You've always belonged, he said. Not because you're perfect, not because you're powerful, but because you're loved. She leaned, her head on his shoulder. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a project or a pet or a weapon. She felt like a person. She felt like home.